The rain whispered against the windows like a lullaby meant for ghosts. Inside a dimly lit hospital room, Anna sat rigidly beside her father's bed. The heart monitor beeped its cold rhythm, echoing the seconds slipping into silence. He was dying, and yet the room felt like it was holding its breath. "There's something you need to know," her father whispered, his voice cracked like old wood. Anna leaned in, breath trembling. "You were never mine," he said. Time stopped. Air drained from the room. The walls blurred, and every childhood memory shattered into confusion. Her body froze, unable to scream. "I'm sorry," he said, closing his eyes. "Forever." Anna stared at him, hollow. Her identity, her lineage, her very blood felt foreign. That name, that history, that man, gone. The nurse entered a moment too late, and Anna sat motionless, lost in 1,000 new questions. Outside, thunder cracked. The world had changed. Permanently. In the days that followed, Anna drifted through existence like a ghost in her own skin. She couldn't eat, couldn't speak. Her father's words looped endlessly in her mind. "You were never mine." What did it mean? Was it literal? Metaphorical? She tore through old letters, photo albums, birth certificates, anything that might ground her. But the past, once warm and familiar, now felt foreign and hostile. Her reflection in the mirror became someone else. The woman staring back was a question with no answer. At night she dreamed of faceless parents and cried herself awake. And during the day, she wandered aimlessly, sometimes forgetting where she was headed. The world continued, indifferent to her unraveling. Friends called, left messages, knocked on her door, unanswered. Anna, once composed and sharp, now stood like glass in a storm, fragile and transparent, waiting for something, anything, to make her feel real again. Anna sat on the edge of her childhood bed, now empty of meaning. The room felt like a museum exhibit frozen in time, trophies, posters, books untouched for decades. She held a photo of her father in his youth, smiling proudly, holding her as a baby. Was it all a lie? Her hand shook. She flipped it over. No note. No clue. Just the date. July 1988. A time she no longer trusted. Her heart ached not just with loss but with betrayal, not from a stranger, but from the one she trusted most. What kind of love carries such a secret to the grave? The silence in the house was unbearable. Every creak of the floorboard screamed questions. Every object became a riddle. She pressed the photo to her chest, but it didn't comfort her. It only made the hole feel deeper. If she wasn't his daughter, then who was she? She returned to the hospital the next day, driven by something she couldn't explain. Closure, maybe, or hope for an answer left behind. The hallway smelled of antiseptic and memories. Room 406 was empty now, bed stripped, walls silent. She stood at the threshold, pulse racing. It was as if her father had never been there. A void where love, lies, and loss once lived. She stepped in, touched the bed frame. Cold. Hugh. She noticed a slip of paper tucked beneath a drawer. A note. Just one line, "Forgive me. Look in the red box." Her breath caught. What red box? Where? She raced home, heart pounding, mind spinning. In the back of her closet, under winter coats and forgotten shoes, she found it. A faded red box with a rusted clasp. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was everything. The red box smelled of age and secrets. Inside were yellowed envelopes, photographs, a worn journal, and a lock of hair tied with a ribbon. Anna unfolded a letter, not her father's handwriting. It began, "To the daughter I never met." Her heart pounded louder than the storm outside. The journal told of a woman named Eleanor, her real mother, and a love affair that was silenced by war, shame, and circumstance. Her father, unable to raise a child born of betrayal, took her as his own. It wasn't malice. It was mercy. But mercy had a price. Anna read page after page, each word peeling away the armor around her grief. She cried not for what was lost, but for what had been hidden out of love. The truth didn't make it easier, but it made it whole. And that was something. That was a beginning. The red box had awakened something in Anna, not clarity, but a hunger to know. She sat at the kitchen table for hours, piecing together letters and journal entries, tracing names she'd never heard but felt drawn to. Eleanor's words were gentle, aching, maternal. "I held you once," one entry read. "You looked like sunlight." Anna wept over that sentence, like it was a song she never knew she needed. Wah! Who was this woman? And why was she hidden? In the envelope labeled "Final Wish," Eleanor had written, "If she ever finds this, take her to Willow Creek." No address. No clue. Just a name. Willow Creek. It sounded like a dream, or a memory she didn't own. She stared at a photo of a young woman with soulful eyes and wild curls. Eleanor. Her mother. Died. Anna touched the image, whispering, "I'm coming." Her heart didn't beat faster. It beat deeper. She had found the question. Now she needed the place. Anna stood on the edge of a field blanketed in early morning mist, the road behind her vanishing into gray. A wooden sign creaked above the dirt path. Willow Creek, 3 miles. Her breath formed clouds in the crisp air. Something inside her shifted. Each step forward was heavy, not with fear, but anticipation. Trees lined the path like ancient sentinels, golden leaves fluttering like quiet applause. She walked slowly, taking in the silence. Birds stirred in the branches. A fox darted across the trail and vanished. Here, the world felt sacred, untouched by time. She reached a bend where a small stream trickled beside a willow tree. For a moment, she stood still. The air smelled of pine and wet earth. Was this where Eleanor once stood? Where she bled, healed, hoped? Anna closed her eyes and felt the wind wrap around her like memory itself. She didn't know what she was looking for, only that she belonged to it. She found the cabin just past the creek, small, weather-worn, and tucked beneath towering pines. Ivy curled along the roof, and moss painted the stones green. It felt like stepping into a forgotten story. Inside, the air smelled of cedar and old books. Everything was frozen in quiet care. A blanket folded neatly, dishes stacked, journals on a shelf. Eleanor had lived here, loved here. Anna walked slowly, fingers grazing the furniture as if touching the past. On the mantel, she found a painting of a woman holding a baby beside a willow. Their faces blurred with time, but their bond, unmistakable. She touched it, tears rising again. How had this life been hidden from her? Why was she denied this peace? She sat in Eleanor's armchair, exhaling slowly. No answers came, only stillness. But that too was a kind of truth. And for the first time in days, Anna didn't feel alone. Later that night, Anna lit a fire and opened Eleanor's final journal. The pages whispered stories of love in wartime, of shame wrapped in silence, of sacrifice made quietly. Eleanor had loved a man who could not stay, bore a daughter she could not keep, and lived a life both rich and lonely. "You were never a mistake," one page read. "You were a breath I never stopped holding." Anna cried over those words as though they were a lullaby lost in time. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows. But inside she felt safe, tethered to a truth deeper than blood. The journal didn't answer every question, but it made space for forgiveness. Eleanor was no longer a stranger. She was a mother. And Anna finally was a daughter again, not to the man who raised her, nor to the silence he left behind, but to a woman who loved her enough to let her go. At dawn, Anna stepped outside, barefoot on the dewy grass, as fog lifted slowly over the hills. She breathed in deep, eyes closed. The cabin behind her, the creek whispering beside her, the mountains ahead, it all felt like home. She walked to the willow tree by the stream and stood beneath its drooping branches. A silence enveloped her, not empty but full. Of what? of memory, of pain, of peace. She knelt, placing Eleanor's journal in the earth beneath the tree, marking it with a river stone. "Thank you," she whispered. "I remember you now." She looked up at the sky, where a beam of sun finally broke through the clouds, golden and clean. In that moment, she felt something inside soften, not healed, but willing to heal. The journey wasn't over, but her spirit had turned from broken to open. Anna returned from Willow Creek different, not lighter, but more awake. She walked through her city like it was foreign soil. The familiar now felt false. Every shop window, every voice on the street reminded her of the life built on unspoken truths. She went back to work at the university, her lectures mechanical, eyes elsewhere. Students noticed. Colleagues whispered. She ignored it all. At night, she sat alone in her apartment, surrounded by books she once loved, now hollow. In the silence, her father's voice haunted her. "You were never mine." It echoed in her bones. A memory surfaced, a birthday when she was 7. He'd gifted her a music box. "You're my miracle," he had said. Was that a lie? Or a deeper truth? Her mind fought, tugged between betrayal and love. The more she searched for peace, the more fragmented she became. Truth had opened the door, now grief had walked in. The nightmares began again. Eleanor drowning in silence. Her father turning away. A child crying in the dark. Anna woke gasping, drenched in sweat. Sleep was no refuge now. It was a battlefield. She sought therapy, desperate for grounding. "I don't know who I am anymore," she confessed. Her therapist nodded gently. "That's where we begin." But beginnings hurt. Each session cracked open more than it healed. She spoke of the mother she never knew, the father she couldn't hate, the self she didn't recognize. She cried in places she never thought tears belonged. The ache wasn't just emotional, it was spiritual. She felt like a house stripped of its foundation. She wasn't building peace. She was unraveling. And in that unraveling, something wild stirred. A question with no words, a scream without a voice. Who am I? Beneath the stories. Who was I before I was named? She took a leave of absence. She couldn't pretend anymore. Instead, Anna isolated, no friends, no phone, no obligations. Her apartment grew silent as a tomb. The city pulsed outside, but inside, time blurred. She stopped eating properly. Her face grew pale. Nights bled into mornings. She wrote in a journal but ripped most of the pages out. One afternoon, she stood in front of the mirror and stared, not out of vanity, but panic. Who was this gaunt woman with haunted eyes? She touched the glass. "Are you real?" she whispered. The mirror didn't answer. Shadows grew under her eyes, not from age, from absence. The absence of truth, of structure, of identity. She wasn't dying, but she wasn't living either. She felt like an echo of someone who used to exist. The silence wasn't peace. It was a scream, folded inward. Anna sat at her kitchen table, staring at a blank page, the red box beside her. The weight of unprocessed grief was unbearable. She wanted to scream. Instead, she poured herself a glass of wine, then another. Soon the bottle was empty. Her limbs were heavy, her heart numb. "I'm tired," she said aloud to no one. The air didn't respond. She reached for the music box her father had given her as a child. It still played, soft and sorrowful. She wound it slowly and listened. Each note chipped away at her defenses. Tears came, silent at first, then gasping. She collapsed on the floor, the music box playing beside her. The sound was gentle and cruel. It reminded her of love and loss, of what was and what wasn't. She sobbed until the music stopped. Then, silence again. But this time it wasn't empty. It held her. And for a flicker of a second, she didn't feel alone. The next morning, Anna woke to silence. Not emptiness, but a different kind, the stillness after a storm. Her eyes were swollen, her body sore, but something inside had shifted. Not healed, just softened. She opened a window. Cold air rushed in, crisp and biting. She stood there, breathing it in, letting the numbness burn away. Her thoughts were quiet. She didn't have answers, but she had questions that no longer frightened her. She picked up the journal again, this time gently. She began writing, not about Eleanor or her father, but about herself. Her voice, her feelings, her journey. It came slow, uncertain but honest. And with each word, she reclaimed a piece of herself. Not the daughter, not the academic, just Anna. In that quiet, she met herself, raw, uncertain, but whole enough to begin again. A week passed before Anna dared to open the sealed envelope marked, "Do not read, unless ready." Her fingers hesitated over the flap as though it might bite. Inside was a letter from her father, dated a year before his death. His handwriting was weaker, but familiar. "Anna," it began, "if you're reading this, then you know, and I'm sorry for the way you found out." She swallowed hard. "I didn't tell you because I feared losing you. I feared you'd see me as the villain, but I was trying to protect something. Maybe not you, maybe myself." His words twisted like thorns. "Eleanor was light. I was shadow. You were born in between." Anna's hands trembled as the truth deepened. He had loved Eleanor. He had loved Anna. But his love had been wrapped in silence. "I couldn't be your father," he wrote. "So I became the man who could raise you." The tears came hot. Forgiveness, painful and reluctant, had begun. Anna sat in silence for hours after reading the letter. Dusk faded around her. The apartment dimmed. She didn't move. Memory reeled, not in snapshots but sensations. The smell of her father's cologne, the rasp in his laugh, the way he'd hummed when making tea. None of it was fake. That was what stung most. The love had been real, even if the story wasn't. She whispered aloud, "You were my father. Not by blood, but by choice, by effort, by presence." And yet, something still ached. She walked to the bookshelf and pulled out an old album. Page after page of smiles, scraped knees, birthday cakes. Every image, a contradiction. Truth sat beside memory, neither negating the other. She realized she had two lives, the one she lived, and the one that lived beneath it. And for the first time, she wasn't trying to merge them. She was letting both be true. Determined to piece it all together, Anna called the lawyer listed in Eleanor's final documents. An hour later, she was walking into a downtown office, heart in her throat. The receptionist led her to a back room filled with filing cabinets and boxes. "She left this for you," the woman said, handing over a folder thick with paper. Anna sat and opened it slowly. Medical records, legal documents, a birth certificate. Her birth certificate. Mother, Eleanor Quinn. Father, unknown. Her hands trembled. The truth was there in ink, not theory. Another sheet. A letter from Eleanor to the state, relinquishing her rights, signed in 1987. Her stomach turned. It wasn't bitterness she felt. It was grief, profound, ancestral grief. Grief for a child given away, for a woman forced to hide love, for all the words never spoken. "You didn't give me up," Anna whispered. "You gave me a chance." That night, Anna took a walk through the park near her childhood home. Leaves rustled above her, and the air smelled like damp soil and memory. Children played in the distance, laughter echoing through the dusk. She sat on a bench under a lantern's glow. The world moved gently around her. She watched a father swing his child into the air, heard the squeal of joy, and smiled through tears. She understood now. Parenthood wasn't just about origin. It was about showing up. Her father, not by biology but by love, had shown up every day. And Eleanor, in her absence, had made the greatest sacrifice. Between them, Anna had been held. Imperfectly, quietly, but fiercely. She placed her hand over her chest. For the first time in her life, she felt the presence of both parents. One in her blood, one in her bones, both in her heart. At home, Anna took the final pages of Eleanor's journal and placed them gently in a new leather-bound notebook. On the first page, she wrote, "This is not an ending. This is a remembering." She closed the book, tied it with ribbon, and placed it next to the red box. Her eyes drifted to the window where morning light was just beginning to kiss the skyline. The chaos inside her had not vanished, but it had been witnessed, understood. The secrets no longer ruled her. They had transformed into threads, into maps, into bridges between past and self. She sat in silence, and in that silence felt presence. Not of ghosts, but of legacy. She was the echo of two souls who once broke, and in breaking made space for her. Anna closed her eyes, hands in her lap. She whispered, "I forgive you." And in that whisper, the past exhaled. Anna stood before her father's grave for the first time since the funeral. Wait. The cemetery was quiet, save for the rustle of wind through dry leaves. She carried no flowers, only the letter he had written. "You tried," she said softly. "You lied, but you loved me the only way you knew how." Her voice wavered. She knelt, placing the letter beside the gravestone. "You weren't perfect, but neither was I. And maybe that's what made us real." Her breath steamed in the cold air. Silence surrounded her, not empty this time, but expectant. "I know who I am now, and I know where I come from." She closed her eyes, palms resting on the earth. "I forgive you, and I release you." As she stood, a gust of wind lifted the edge of the letter, but it stayed rooted, like something finally finding home. Her heart ached, not with grief, but with release. That night, she returned to her apartment and lit a single candle. No distractions, no noise, just flame, breath, stillness. She sat in front of the mirror again, not to examine, but to meet. Her own gaze stared back with something new, gentleness. She whispered, "I'm sorry I abandoned you." The reflection didn't flinch. "I'm sorry I doubted your worth." Her voice cracked. "I'm sorry I made love conditional, even with myself." The tears came slowly, but they didn't flood. They cleansed. She touched her chest and felt the beat of her own heart, steady, tired, true. In this quiet reckoning, she saw not brokenness but becoming. She saw the girl inside, hiding for decades, now emerging. She didn't need anyone to name her anymore. She would name herself. That night, Anna didn't need saving. She needed space. And in making space, she became whole. The next morning, Anna visited her childhood home for the last time. It was being sold. She moved through each room slowly, touching walls, closing drawers, breathing in ghosts. In the living room, she found a box labeled Anna's Drawings. Inside, childish sketches of stars, hearts, houses, and always two figures. A man and a girl, always hand in hand. She smiled softly. Even as a child, she'd known where love lived. She took one drawing and slipped it into her coat pocket. In the kitchen, she wrote a note. "This house raised me. I leave it in peace." She didn't cry. She didn't crumble. Instead, she locked the door and stepped outside. Sunlight met her face. The wind was different. Not pushing, not pulling, just present. She walked away without looking back, not because she didn't care, but because she no longer had to chase what she already carried inside. Anna took a solo trip to the coast. No itinerary, no destination, just movement. She drove through winding roads, past forgotten towns, windows down, hair flying freely. The sound of the ocean arrived before the sight. When she finally stood before it, the sea roared like a hymn. Waves crashed in chaotic rhythm, but she felt no fear. She stepped onto the sand barefoot, the cold biting her soles, and walked until the world narrowed to salt and breath. She screamed. Not in pain, in power. It was raw, primal, true. The sound carried into the wind like a bird breaking from a cage. She laughed. She cried. She danced a little. She knelt and touched the tide. I am mine, she whispered. I always was. The ocean didn't respond. It didn't need to. It witnessed her. And for the first time, she felt infinite. Not because she was healed, but because she was free. That night, she built a small fire on the beach and placed the last items from the red box into the flames. Old photos, worn letters, her own shredded journal pages. She didn't do it out of anger. She did it out of reverence. Each page curled, flamed, and turned to ash. Memory became smoke. Pain became embers. She watched the fire burn low, then walked to the edge of the sea and dipped her hands into the icy water. Her breath caught. She wasn't shedding the past. She was honoring it. She sat by the fire until it was nothing but glow. Stars blanketed the sky above her. The wind howled like a lullaby this time, not a warning. She whispered, "Let it go, let it all go." And in the dark, with nothing left to hold onto, she felt held by everything. Not healed, not finished, but wide open. Anna returned home not with answers, but with space inside her she had never known. Her apartment was just as she'd left it, books stacked unevenly, plants thirsty, dishes still in the sink. But it didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt lived in. She didn't rush to clean it. Instead, she sat on the couch and let sunlight fall across her legs. She exhaled. A real, full breath. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. She ran her fingers across the spine of a new journal resting on the coffee table. Not to write her past, but to write from where she was. No longer driven by pain. Not pretending to be whole, but willing. Ready. Ready. A bird landed on her windowsill and sang a strange, beautiful tune. She smiled. Life wasn't offering her clarity. It was offering her presence. And after everything, that was enough. She took long walks now. Not to escape, but to arrive. Side streets. Parks. Cafes she'd never noticed. Everything felt new, though nothing had changed. On one walk she passed a little girl skipping rope, her laughter bouncing off brick walls. Anna paused, caught by a wave of something soft and aching. Not sadness, remembrance. She saw herself in that child. Innocent. Curious. Unfractured. The girl looked up and smiled at her. Anna smiled back, eyes glistening. For a moment, they held each other's gaze like old friends. That night, Anna dreamt of water, not drowning but floating. She moved with the current, not against it. In the dream, she heard her mother's voice for the first time. Not words, just melody. It was enough. The next morning, she woke up smiling. Not because life was easy, but because she had learned how to meet it. And she started teaching again. Smaller classes, slower pace, gentler voice. Not the Anna who chased perfection, but the one who welcomed presence. Her students noticed. She shared less content and more silence, asking questions instead of giving answers. "What defines truth for you?" she asked one day. The room stilled. A young man answered, "Whatever leaves me more honest than before." She nodded, heart swelling. She no longer needed to be the smartest person in the room. She only needed to be real. After class, she walked to the library and sat by the window, watching autumn leaves drift like slow dancers. She sipped tea without urgency. The world still moved fast, but she didn't have to. Her peace wasn't performative. It was quiet, humble, and earned. She felt more like herself in those moments of stillness than she ever had in motion. Back at Willow Creek, months later, Anna sat beneath the willow tree again. The branches whispered softly in the wind. She brought no boxes, no journals, just herself. She leaned back against the trunk, eyes closed, and listened. The silence here had changed, not emptiness but echo. Her heartbeat slowed to match the rhythm of the land. She didn't ask questions. She didn't search for signs. She simply breathed. A breeze lifted her hair. A bird sang overhead. It wasn't mystical. It wasn't dramatic. It was real. She placed her palm on the soil. "Thank you," she whispered, not just to Eleanor, but to everything. To the brokenness, the ache, the unraveling. It had all led her here. To stillness, to acceptance. Oh, to a self no longer defined by what she'd lost, but by what she now carried, grace. That evening, Anna sat at a table near the window, a blank sheet before her, pen in hand. Not to journal, not to analyze, just to write. She began with a single sentence, "I am not broken." Then paused, let it breathe. Then continued, "I am unfolding." Her pen moved slowly, like breath on paper. She didn't write for legacy. She wrote to listen, to the version of herself that had waited in silence for years. As the sky darkened, the room filled with lamplight and quiet music. She paused often, not to edit, but to feel. The words didn't come to impress. They came to release. After a while, she set the pen down. Not because she was done, but because for the first time she didn't need to finish. She folded the paper, placed it near her heart, and whispered, "Thank you, Anna, for coming back to me." The first snowfall arrived quietly. Anna stood on her balcony wrapped in a wool shawl, watching the flakes drift like silent feathers through the twilight. Everything below had softened. Streets, cars, rooftops, erased beneath white. She didn't reach for her phone. She didn't need to capture it. She was living it. A neighbor's dog barked joyfully in the distance. And somewhere, someone played a piano. The sound floated upward like smoke. Anna closed her eyes and smiled. The world didn't demand anything from her right now. No proving. No pushing. Only presence. She thought of her parents, both of them, and sent them gratitude. Not because they were perfect, but because they gave her the mess from which she could rise. "I'm not here to fix what was broken," she thought. "I'm here to live what remains." The snow continued falling like memory, like blessing, like grace. Inside, Anna lit a candle and turned on an old vinyl, a soft jazz tune that filled the room like warm breath. She danced. Not a performance, not for anyone else. Just swaying barefoot, eyes closed. Her body moved the way trees move in the wind, quiet, rhythmic, unashamed. She wasn't young. She wasn't old. She just was. Time blurred. Memory softened. Her arms reached out, spun slowly, then returned inward. Her laughter bubbled up unexpectedly, and she let it spill. Not from joy, not from sorrow, just from being alive. In that moment, she remembered her 7-year-old self, dancing in the kitchen to the hum of her father's voice. He had made her feel safe. Now, she made herself feel free. The music slowed. She stopped, hand to chest, eyes wet. Not because she missed them, but because she'd found herself. Weeks passed. Anna wrote daily now, not as therapy, but as ritual. Letters to no one. Thoughts captured like birds resting on the page. She didn't reread them. She just let them land. Some days she wrote 3 lines. Some days, 20 pages. The words weren't meant to explain, only to exist. She also started gardening. Tiny sprouts lined her kitchen window. Basil, lavender, something unknown. She didn't need them to grow fast. She only needed to care for them. In their quiet, she found companionship. In their fragility, strength. Sometimes at night, she whispered to the leaves. Not for magic, for peace. Her grief hadn't vanished. Her wounds hadn't sealed. but her spirit had stopped resisting. She had learned how to hold pain without letting it define her. Like the earth, she was learning to bloom with the cracks exposed. Spring arrived unnoticed, until one morning, Anna opened the window and heard birdsong. Real birdsong. Not muffled through glass, but singing straight into her soul. She smiled deeply. Not because everything was perfect, it wasn't, but because she had stopped waiting for perfection. She stepped outside barefoot, feeling the earth warm beneath her feet. She closed her eyes and whispered, "I'm here." That was all she needed now, to show up, to breathe, to witness her life unfold. A breeze brushed her face. It carried no meaning, and yet it felt like a blessing. She remembered her mother's final note. If she ever finds this, Anna smiled again. She had. Not the place, not just the people, but herself. And that was the secret no one could steal. Not even time. Not even death. The story had unraveled, and in doing so revealed something greater. Wholeness. She sat on the porch steps with a cup of tea, the sun low on the horizon. Not much moved, just the wind, the birds, the steam rising from her mug. No music. No thoughts. Just breath. Just being. She looked out over the quiet street, smiled and spoke aloud, not to anyone but as if the earth itself were listening. "I forgive the silence," she said, "and I no longer need the answers." Her voice was steady, her eyes clear. She wasn't the woman from before. She was not the wound. She was the witness. She had learned to live without needing to control, to be seen without explanation, to surrender without losing herself. And in that surrender, she found a strange kind of freedom. Not loud, not cinematic, just real. She took another sip, closed her eyes, and the final words of her story floated into the wind. Peace doesn't ask to be earned, only allowed.